My mom kicked me out of the house because of her new boyfriend. A couple of days later, they came running to me. I was 16 when my mother, Dolores, stood in the doorway of my bedroom and told me plainly, "You can't stay here anymore. This is Cammie's room now." She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just said it like she was reading from a grocery list. Like she'd rehearsed it a dozen times. Behind her stood Clint, her new husband, leaning casually against the wall with a can of something cheap in his hand and a smirk on his face. He added, almost proudly, "That's right. This house is for family now." Dolores giggled like it was the end of a sitcom episode. I just sat there on my bed, backpack half-zipped, a geometry book still open beside me. I blinked. The words didn't make sense, not at first. They didn't land the way you might expect devastating news to land. It felt more like the air had gone out of the room, like everything familiar had tilted just a bit. This wasn't a punishment. This wasn't a scolding or a lecture or some warped attempt at discipline. It was a decision. A declaration. And suddenly, I was on the outside. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I knew better. I looked around at the room I'd spent most of my life in, the model airplane still hanging from the ceiling, the old corkboard with my school ribbons pinned up like artifacts, the spot on the wall where my dad and I marked my height every year with a pencil. I quietly got up and started packing. A duffel bag, my backpack, a laptop, 2 notebooks, my headphones. I even grabbed the little framed photo of Dad from my nightstand without thinking. Dolores didn't speak. Clint drained his beer and disappeared back into the living room. That was it. I left without a word. For days later, they were at my uncle's doorstep. Crying. But let me go back, because that day wasn't the beginning of the story. Just the breaking point. A year before, things had been different. My father, Martin, was still alive. He wasn't perfect, he could be stubborn about rules, and way too obsessed with working on old radios, but he loved me. He really loved me. The kind of love you didn't have to earn. He showed up. He made breakfast. He knew the names of my teachers and would fix anything I broke, even if I was the one who ruined it in the first place. Then, one rainy Sunday morning, he didn't come home. His car had been hit by a drunk driver 2 miles from our house. Just like that, he was gone. Dolores broke for a while. She cried for the first few weeks, quiet sobs in the kitchen, late-night breakdowns I could hear through the walls. Then, just as quickly, she stopped. 3 months later, she brought Clint home. Said she met him at a community outreach dinner. "He's been through things too," she said, like that explained everything. A week after that, he moved in with his daughter, Cammie, who was 18 and already halfway out the door to college. Cammie wasn't the problem. We didn't talk, didn't fight. She was polite in the way people are when they're trying not to be noticed. She mostly stayed in her room or at her part-time job. Clint, though, he was a problem from the start. He was always between jobs, which really meant he didn't do anything. He turned the garage into his personal man cave, full of cigarette butts and sports radio. He drank cheap beer by the case, bought with Dolores's money. He borrowed my dad's tools, then started selling them. He even listed our house address on his unemployment paperwork like he belonged there. Dolores changed too. She started dressing younger, wearing perfume she never liked before, playing old pop songs too loudly while cleaning. She took down all the photos of Dad. Sold his old pickup. His workbench disappeared. Even the easy chair he always sat in, that vanished without a word. Every trace of my father was slowly erased, like he'd been edited out of the family album. I tried not to think about it. I went to school. I kept my head down. I still came home, did my homework, ate dinner at the corner of the table while Clint watched game shows with the volume too loud. I didn't rock the boat. Until the day they sank it. "You're out," Dolores said. No argument. No fight. No chance to explain that I was still her son. I walked 2 miles across town to my Uncle Wallace's house. I didn't call ahead. I just showed up, duffel bag over one shoulder, backpack on the other, and stood on the porch until he opened the door. He didn't say much. Just looked at me for a moment and said, "You hungry?" He gave me leftover casserole and a clean blanket. The spare room above his tool shed smelled like dust and oil, but it was warm, and it was safe. The next morning, over weak coffee and stronger silence, I told him everything. I didn't cry. I didn't embellish. I just told it straight. He listened without interrupting. Then he leaned back and said, "You know your dad left everything to your mother under one condition, right?" I didn't. I barely understood legal things back then. Wallace went on, "It's all in a trust. Your dad set it up that way to make sure you'd always have a home. If your mom remarried and started making choices that hurt you, there are clauses. Clauses that can be enforced. He wasn't guessing. Wallace had helped draft the papers. He had copies. Names of attorneys. A phone number that still worked. Time to remind her whose house that really is, he said. At first, I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to feel safe again. But then I remembered Clint's grin, and the way Dolores laughed when he said the house was only for family. That's when I knew this wasn't just about a room. This was about taking back what never should have been taken from me in the first place. It only took a few days to get the ball rolling. Wallace called the attorney listed in my dad's trust, an older gentleman named Marlon Tisdale, and explained the situation. Marlon didn't sound surprised. We put protections in place for a reason, he said. If what you're saying holds up, we'll have options. Good ones. And we did. The trust had two main clauses tied to my well-being. The first was straightforward: if I was forced out of the home before turning 18, and without provable misconduct on my part, the house would be placed under review. Depending on the situation, that meant foreclosure or repossession by the trustee. The second clause, though, it was the one Clint and Dolores never saw coming. Clause 2 said that if Dolores' new spouse benefited financially from the property either through cohabitation, asset use, or redirected finances, while I, her minor child, was actively displaced, the entire estate could be challenged. Not just the house. Everything my father had left behind, the savings account, the insurance payout, the car, the furniture, the tools, all of it. Wallace looked over the documents and tapped his finger against that part like it was a countdown clock. They don't just lose the house, kid. They lose it all. It wasn't about money for me. Not really. It was about being erased. About how quickly Dolores had chosen someone new and rewritten our family like it was an inconvenience. The lawyer sent a notice of violation to Dolores by registered mail. We waited. 3 days later, they showed up. It was early evening when I saw Dolores' car pull into Wallace's gravel driveway. Clint's old truck limped behind it, one headlight out, a black trash bag fluttering in the bed. They didn't come to the door right away. They stood outside like they were trying to decide who should speak first. I watched from the window upstairs. Dolores knocked. Wallace opened the door but didn't step aside. She started talking fast, saying she didn't know, saying Clint had misunderstood, saying she just wanted her family back. Her eyes were red, her voice shaking. I didn't move. I didn't come downstairs. Wallace stayed calm. You pushed him out of his home, he said plainly. You don't get to walk that back because the consequences finally showed up. Then Clint stepped forward, angry already. You're trying to ruin us, he barked. This house is just as much mine now. Wallace laughed, just once. Not mean, just amazed. You think you own something because you drank beer in the garage? He asked. Clint shoved him. Wallace didn't budge. He's a large man. Years of lifting tractor parts and hauling scrap metal turned him into something more mountain than man. Clint stumbled backward and nearly fell off the porch. Dolores screamed. Clint kicked the porch railing, and the two of them retreated to their cars. The next day, a lawyer called us on their behalf, trying to negotiate. They're willing to reach a compromise, the man said. Wallace told him, read the trust again. We're not interested in compromise. From that moment, it wasn't just a family dispute. It became a process. A legal one. And things started moving fast. An inspection was scheduled. The house was evaluated. The paperwork was compiled. Marlon, the attorney, filed a petition on my behalf. I didn't understand all the terms. There were words like breach, contingency, and forfeiture, but I understood the outcome. If they didn't cooperate, they would be legally removed. A week later, we received a notice from the city clerk. A court date had been set. That's when Clint started spiraling. He showed up drunk at Wallace's hardware store twice in 1 week. Once, he stood in the parking lot yelling about stolen legacy and lying lawyers. Wallace didn't even go outside. He just called the sheriff and waited. Clint didn't stick around long once the cruiser arrived. Then he tried something worse. One afternoon, while I was walking home from school, he pulled up beside me in his truck. Think you're real clever, huh? He said through the open window. I didn't answer. You're nothing without your daddy's will, he snapped, and then he drove off, tires squealing on the road. I told Wallace. He called the lawyer. Marlon filed for a temporary protective order that same day. It was granted the next morning. I thought that might calm things down. Instead, it got more volatile. Clint began sending letters. No return address, just scribbled threats. One read, "You're trying to destroy a man's life." Another, "This isn't over." Some came in envelopes smeared with grease or beer. We turned them all over to the sheriff's office. Dolores sent me text messages too. They were different, softer, more sentimental. Photos of me when I was 5. A video of my birthday party from 3rd grade. Bible verses. Then guilt. Then, "Please just come home." I didn't answer a single one. Wallace told me she's trying to rewrite the past because she doesn't like the consequences of the present. And he was right. Around this time, Cami, Clint's daughter, sent me a message. Just one. "I'm sorry this happened," she wrote. "You didn't deserve any of it." I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed my phone and didn't respond. It was strange, seeing someone who lived just across the hall for a year reduced to a ghost with a single sentence. But what could she say? She wasn't the one who kicked me out. But she wasn't the one who stopped it either. The court date drew closer. Clint and Dolores were still in the house, but not for much longer. We received notice from their attorney that they were reviewing options. I didn't trust the quiet. Wallace and I met with Marlon again, and that's when he brought up something he'd found buried deep in the trust. Something even more explosive than the original conditions. "There's a subclause," he said, adjusting his glasses. "It states that if Dolores remarries and her new spouse derives any measurable gain from the estate while displacing the minor child, meaning you, it nullifies the spousal claim to inheritance. Permanently." Wallace raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" "Meaning not only do they lose the house," Marlon said, "but the court could move to reclaim all assets back into a protected account for you. Everything. Insurance. Vehicles. Personal property. Even items sold can be challenged." We sat in stunned silence. It wasn't just about removing Clint from the house anymore. This could bankrupt them. Marlon suggested we hold off on revealing it just until the final hearing. "Let them make their case first," he said. We agreed. At this point, the house wasn't home anymore. Not to them. And not yet to me. But it was something. It was truth. It was proof that my father had thought of me even in death. That he'd tried to protect me. And now, I was going to honor that. 3 days before the hearing, everything shifted again. I was working on a school project in Wallace's office at the back of his store when the landline rang. It was the sheriff. Clint had been arrested again. This time for breaking into a shed on someone's property 2 blocks from the house. He was caught drunk, yelling, trying to force the door open with a tire iron. When the homeowner confronted him, Clint shouted that he was defending what's his. The deputies found a folded-up copy of our court filing in his back pocket. The arrest was a violation of the temporary order already in place. He was held overnight. They let him out the next morning with a warning. We didn't celebrate. We didn't talk much at all. Wallace just looked tired. I felt something I didn't expect, pity. Not for Clint exactly, but for the pathetic mess he'd become. And for how far Dolores must have fallen to tie herself to him. But what happened next made all that pity evaporate. When I got home from school 2 days later, there was a ceramic frog smashed on the front porch. It had been one of my mother's garden decorations. I'd thrown it in the trash when we reclaimed the house months earlier. Now it was back, in pieces. Next to it was a bundle of junk mail tied with string, taped to the door. Inside, another letter. Sloppily written. No name. "You think this is over. You think you're safe. But you stole my life. You're nothing without your old man's handouts. See you soon." I stood there on the porch, the air completely still around me, reading those words over and over. Wallace filed an emergency order. The sheriff increased patrols near the property. Ray installed a second set of locks and motion-activated cameras that same night. I moved back into Wallace's spare room without discussion. We both knew what was coming. Dolores called once. Wallace picked up. "I didn't know he'd go that far," she said. He's angry." Wallace said nothing. "I just wanted to keep the peace," she went on. "You did a lot of things," he told her, "but peace wasn't one of them." Then he hung up. The following weekend, we returned to the house during the day to check on things. From the outside, everything looked normal. The lawn was still dry and yellow from summer heat, and the porch lights hadn't been replaced. But when we stepped into the garage, the doorframe was splintered. Someone had pried it open. Inside, tools scattered, boxes overturned, insulation torn from the walls. Nothing stolen, just ruined. Spray painted on the back wall in thick, dripping red letters. "You'll never get rid of me." We didn't say anything for a while. Wallace just stood there staring, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. Then, without looking at me, he said, "We're done playing defense." The next morning, we met with Marlin and submitted a full case file. Every incident. Every letter. Every police report. Every video clip from the surveillance camera. Wallace had even managed to photograph Clint's truck parked 3 blocks from my high school 2 days in a row. We weren't just pushing for eviction or civil relief anymore. We were requesting criminal charges. Harassment. Trespassing. Intent to intimidate a minor. Vandalism. Probation violations. That same day, a private investigator we'd hired returned with additional evidence. Clint had been sleeping in his truck, sometimes just outside town limits, other times parked behind the liquor store. In one photo, taken just a week before, he was seen sitting on the curb behind the school bus stop, watching. It was enough. The district attorney filed for a formal hearing with the intent to charge Clint as a repeat offender under statutes that could lead to real jail time. Then Dolores appeared. She came to Wallace's house alone. Middle of the afternoon. No warning. I saw her through the window before she even knocked, standing there with a stack of papers in her hand, her shoulders slumped, no makeup, hair tied back, eyes sunken. She didn't look like someone coming to fight. I didn't want to open the door. But I did. She didn't say hello. She didn't even look me in the eye. Instead, she held out the folder and said, "I'm filing for divorce." My hands didn't move. I didn't reach for it. She looked like she'd aged 10 years and 6 months. "I know you probably don't believe me," she continued. But I didn't know what Clint was really capable of. I was afraid to admit it. Afraid of what that would say about me. I didn't respond. Then she said something that stuck. "He told me last week, if he couldn't have the house, nobody could." That night, we emptied the garage of everything valuable. Wallace brought a few guys from the shop and reinforced the door frames. We boarded up the back windows and changed the locks again. Because if what she said was true, the worst might still be ahead. 3 nights before the court hearing, we found out how true it was. Someone lit a fire behind the fence. It was small, started with gasoline and some torn cloth, probably intended to scare rather than destroy. But the fire crept fast, and if not for the rain earlier that day, it might have jumped to the shed. Or the house. The fire department arrived quickly. The investigators found footprints near the burn spot. A gas can was left behind, half melted. But no fingerprints. This time, no one brushed it off. This was arson. Attempted property destruction. Possibly even worse. The sheriff posted a car across the street from the house for 2 nights. I stayed with Wallace. I didn't sleep. The day before the hearing, we met with the DA. They assured us that with everything collected to surveillance footage, eyewitness accounts, police records, the previous restraining order violations, and the letters, there was more than enough to proceed. If the judge agreed, Clint would be facing not just fines, but real time behind bars. And for the first time since this started, I saw it clearly, this man who tried to take everything from me was about to lose everything instead. Dolores didn't come to the hearing. She sent a letter through her attorney confirming the divorce and waiving any claim to the house or estate. Clint did show up. He walked into that courtroom wearing an old button-up shirt that didn't fit and scuffed shoes that looked like they'd been slept in. He sat down, barely looked up, and didn't say a word until the judge asked if he had anything to say. Then he stood. "I never meant for things to go this far," he mumbled. "But I ain't apologizing. The boy twisted everything. I gave up everything for that house. That family." The judge asked again, "Do you accept responsibility for the threats, the damage, and the ongoing harassment?" Clint looked at me then. His eyes were dull. Empty. Whatever pride he once carried had burned away. "No," he said. "I don't." The courtroom fell quiet. The judge took less than 5 minutes to rule. Restraining order extended permanently. Maximum fines imposed. Community service ordered. And if Clint violated the order again, immediate jail time, no exceptions. As for the arson charge, the DA was moving forward. They had enough. Wallace and I walked out of that courtroom in silence. But for the first time in nearly a year, the air felt different. Like maybe the storm had finally passed. After the hearing, things didn't change overnight. But for the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder every time I walked home from school. My house, sat quietly at the end of Sycamore Lane, a little overgrown, a little forgotten, but standing. Wallace drove me over that Saturday afternoon with the new keys in hand. "Time you see what's yours," he said. We walked through the place room by room. The front door stuck a little in the frame. The living room still smelled faintly of stale beer and cigarette smoke. There were scuff marks on the hardwood floor where Clint's recliner had dug in. But beneath all that, it was still the house Dad built with his own 2 hands. My bedroom was mostly empty. The walls had faint outlines where posters used to hang, and the closet door squeaked like it was scared to move. The dent in the corner of the baseboard was still there from when I dropped my first science project. I didn't say much. I don't think I could have, even if I wanted to. That evening, we grilled burgers in the backyard. Wallace brought over a new doormat. It was basic, nothing fancy, but stitched into the bottom corner were the words, "Still standing." We laughed. It felt right. In the days that followed, I started slow. I repainted one room at a time. Took down the old curtains. Opened every window to let out the ghosts. I worked during the afternoons after school, patching holes, scrubbing baseboards, replacing light bulbs. Wallace helped when he could. Taught me how to rehang cabinet doors and fix a leaky faucet. He even brought over a used flat-screen TV from his shop and helped mount it on the living room wall. The first thing we watched on it was a rerun of a show Dad used to love. By the time summer rolled in, the house felt different. Lighter. Cammy messaged me once in late June. Just one sentence. "I'm glad you got the house." I didn't reply, but I didn't delete the message either. One morning in July, I walked the neighborhood and saw a "for rent" sign go up in the front yard of the duplex where Dolores had moved. I never saw her again after that. Word was she took a job in another town. Something modest. A diner or a laundromat. The kind of job that made you start over, day by day. Haley, I heard, left for college on a scholarship. We were never close, but a part of me hoped she made it out okay. She didn't choose any of this. And Clint? He was officially out of my life. After the court ruling, he stayed quiet for a while. But the arson case moved forward. He was found guilty of attempted property damage with intent to intimidate. No plea bargain this time. The judge gave him time in county jail and mandatory rehab. The day the sentence came down, Wallace and I sat on the back porch with 2 bottles of iced tea and just breathed. There was no cheering. No celebration. Just quiet relief. In August, I finished repainting the last room in the house, my father's old study. It took the longest. I saved it for last because it felt sacred. Like touching it too soon would be disrespectful. I didn't restore it to what it used to be. I made it mine. New desk. Clean shelves. A photo of him in the corner, smiling beside a fishing pole. That night, I finally moved my books back in. For the first time in a long time, I slept through the night. There were no dreams. No yelling. No broken windows. Just the hum of the old ceiling fan and the soft creak of the floor settling beneath me. The next morning, I made myself breakfast. Just eggs and toast. I stood in the kitchen, looking out the window, and felt something I didn't have a name for at first. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't even relief. It was peace. Not the kind people write about in books, the kind you earn. Clint had tried to take everything from me, my home, my safety, my family. Dolores helped him, whether she meant to or not. They thought they could shove me out and never look back. But I came back. And I didn't just take back the house. I took back the story. This place isn't haunted anymore. It's healing. And every nail I hammer, every coat of paint, every new piece of furniture, it's not just fixing the house. It's rebuilding me. Wallace still comes by every Sunday. We don't talk about the past anymore. We talk about weather, school, the weird squirrel that lives in the tree by the porch. Normal stuff. The kind of stuff I didn't think I'd get again. The front yard needs work. The porch steps still creak. The roof's probably going to need replacing next year. But it's mine. It's all mine. And every time I turn the key in the door, I remember. I didn't win this house. I earned it back. Thank you for watching the video, like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.